What's up, guys? I'm Jesse Redmond, Head of Investor Relations and Business Development at LEEF Brands. I'm here today with our CEO, Micah Anderson. Micah and I just returned from shooting an amazing tour of LEEF Labs, our state-of-the-art extraction facility in Mendocino County. But before we jump into that footage, we wanted to provide you some context on who LEEF Brands is. So, Micah, for investors new to the story, can you provide them with an overview of the company?
Yeah, so if you're new to the story and who we are, at our core, we're an extraction company, originally based out of California, now operating in New York as well. We run a large extraction facility, which you guys are going to get a tour of in this video, in Northern California in a little town called Willits, Mendocino County. We run one of the larger cultivation sites in California in Santa Barbara County, a little town called Cuyama. We tend to stick to the little towns. It's a 187-acre land use permit. We are currently cultivating 65 acres of that. Everything is purposed for extraction. So the tour that you guys are going to get in this video, everything that we grow gets either ground up or frozen, put into some sort of form that allows for us to efficiently run it through 3 main extraction lines, which we're going to go over. Our business model really centers around selling concentrates to many of the larger brands and retail footprints in California. And recently in 2025, we've replicated that business model in New York. So we purchased a manufacturing or a processing license in New York that allows for us to basically do the same thing that we're doing in California in New York. And it's really rinse and repeat. We're working with the same brands, doing the same thing in New York, and we're seeing success so far. So the plan is to spend a year executing on that in New York, and then I think that you'll probably see the company start to punch out more of these labs across America.
And Micah, what is it, in your opinion, that makes LEEF Labs special?
In my opinion, I think that one of the things, the main contributing factor that makes LEEF special is our employees. We have a very, very passionate team of people that actually run the company, the people that are doing the work, many of which are located in Northern California and have been in the cannabis industry for a very long time, which is great. So passion really fuels the company, and that's one of the things that makes it special. I think beyond that, just kind of for people that are new to the story, it's the size by which of what we're doing. We're able to get our cost of goods down in a way that other companies struggle to do so. So I think that that's another contributing factor. And we're focused on, we're very laser focused on one thing. I think that that's one of the things, and it took us, we've been doing this for over 10 years now. And over the course of time, we found that like honing in on extraction, being a concentrate provider, has really made us good at what we do versus being diluted and spread kind of all over the place. We do a little of this, a little of that. And over the course of time, I feel like that's one of the things that's really helped us in recent years.
Well, awesome. I appreciate the time, Micah. Let's jump into the tour, starting with the ethanol line.
Cool.
We made our way over to the lab, Micah. This looks like a beautiful room. Can you explain what happens in here?
Sure. Yeah, so this is our winterization room. So this is a part of the ethanol line. And the way, just a high level overview of the flow. So we have, in the next room over, we have our extractors. So ethanol extractors, think of them as like large washing machines where you put 30-pound sacks or sometimes bigger of the biomass material that's ground to a certain size. We load those socks, we put those socks into freezers overnight. One of the secrets to doing this is keeping everything very, very cold. And anytime that you're introducing any sort of like heat in any part of the process, you get diminishing returns out of it. So we try and keep everything cold throughout the entire process. So everything starts over here in the other side of the room. We wash it 2-3 times. Everything's charged with nitrogen lines. And so we use an iPad to shoot it into this room, and it'll sit in these tanks. We fill up these tanks. They're jacketed. There's some sort of coolant on the inside. I'm not going to pretend like I know the name of it. That drops them to a specific temp. We control the length of residency. The guys have like strict parameters here on what they're looking for in terms of color and time and all that. And what you get is a separation in the tincture. So your fats, your lipids, your waxes, things like that start to separate out of the material. Good stuff goes one direction, bad stuff goes the other. Good stuff goes through here, and then we go into this. This is essentially a 4-stage carbon filtration process, and we'll run it through this, and then it goes through the next piece, and then it goes into solvent recovery from there. So this is really just one room in the process. This is where winterization takes place in the ethanol line.
And is this the last stop for the ethanol line, or is there one more step you said?
No, so from here we go through kind of that machine I was telling you about, which is RBR, which is over there. We're not going to show it. And then it goes into solvent recovery, which is in the next room. I'll show you guys what that looks like. And then from there it goes into decarb, and then it goes into distillation from there.
Okay. Well, cool. Let's transition and talk about another one of our lines, which is the hydrocarbon line. I think that's probably second in popularity to the ethanol line. The hydrocarbon line, Micah, I think is cool because you can make so many different fractions from it. With ethanol, you get distillate, different grades of distillate. But from the hydrocarbon line, I see everything like this beautiful butter that we have here. We get sugar, shatter. They still make that. I'm dripping water. Batter, even liquid live resin. There's a whole range of fractions that you can make out of the hydrocarbon line. Sometimes I see more than 50 hydrocarbon fractions on our menu. Can you talk a little bit about how the hydrocarbon line is made and what that output looks like?
Yeah, so the hydrocarbon line, it's a different type of solvent, and you can use straight butane. You can use a mix of butane, propane, hexane, like different types of anes, volatile solvents, and so you get a different type of product coming out of it. And so it's a different line. I'll show you guys the line, but the result of it, like you said, is like you can do different things with the material after the extraction process, where you end up with a bunch of different fractions for different purposes. Some people want to buy 1 gram pucks for dabbable products, and that's going to be a specific type of product. Other people want something that's more for a vape pen, so you're going to have your vape ready type stuff, and that's a different process. And so it goes from the extraction process into ovens, which are under vac, and you're basically pulling out the solvents in that process. For different periods of time, and then the guys will take it from there, and there's just different things that you do with it in the post-processing, whipping it a certain way or putting it in just different methodologies. You can make diamonds, you can make butter, batter, shatter, wax, like all these different things. And for our clients, it's great because they're able to start to fill different product mixes that they want, so they can build a line that's got 10, 12 different things, different product SKUs, and then we'll fill in behind that with 5 to 6, 7 different flavors for each SKU.
And it seems like from a price perspective, it kind of sits between distillate and solventless rosin. Is that fair? So you get good potency, good flavor, but also fairly good bang for your buck on the hydrocarbon stuff?
Correct. That's true.
And on the input materials, you can run frozen or you can run cured material as well.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how that works and the different fractions that might come out of a cured versus a frozen?
Yeah, so like in California, cured is definitely becoming like more of a desirable thing, and I really think it's just to have like a high quality value product, So you're still making like a cured resin, but it's the difference is live is a live frozen flour, is the type of material, and you're trying to like really use high quality inputs for that material. Cured material, a lot of times we're running like dried material from indoor facilities that's like got a very like high potency rate on it, and even from outdoor, just depending on what what price target you're trying to make for the client, depends on what they want. And so in the past, I'd say like in the past 5 years, we'd seen most of the demand was really through frozen, and then as people are looking for more of these value products, we're seeing a lot more people that are like now asking us to take on the cured side of it as well.
And I think years ago, when I used to think about live resin, I thought about it as a dabbing thing. It came into jar, was popular with dabbers. Same thing with the cureds, with the shatters and the butters. But that's evolved a lot so that you're getting hydrocarbon, things like live resin, also in pens and edibles. Do you see that as a growing part of the market, like the vape ready, liquid live resin? I was going to say vape ready, but I think you call it liquid live resin.
Yeah, I think across just all different extraction lines, like clients are they're wanting everything in vape form. And now there's it's been around for a while, but yeah, you can essentially take everything and put it into a vape form. So liquid live resin, you can also do it through the rosin production line as well.
And last question on the hydrocarbon line, when you think about what makes LEEF produce high quality hydrocarbon products, again, do you think that's a mix of those three variables about the input materials, again, the systems, and also the people, or is there any particular edge you think LEEF has on the hydrocarbon side?
You know, our team is very good. Like, we've been lucky. Like, the staff here is very, very passionate about what they're doing, you know, and across all the different extraction lines. So I think I'd start there and just say that the team, the attention to detail is very good. The farming group, you know, the different farmers that we work with are also very good. And like, it's been cool to see, like, over the years, coming out of like before it was recreationally legal to where it is now, you're able to have like open dialogue with farms in a way that you weren't really able to have. Like, no one talked to each other before, and it was like, not this process did not look like this in the past. But now that it's like, the evolution of it is allowing us to have, I'm stumbling on my words, but what I'm trying to say is, like, I can have a conversation with the farm and share with them the results. And so everyone's working together on like, oh, okay, I need to harvest a week earlier because I let it go too long, and the result of that was that the concentrates came out this kind of darker color, and that's not really what we're looking for. So that's been kind of very cool to see. And so you're working with these farming partners on, everyone's trying to get better yields, higher quality product together. It's more valuable for them, and it's more valuable for us as well.
Yeah, and Gary, who's our lab director, has also told me that the same thing you did, which is keeping stuff cold and having that experience about making all of the mistakes. He talks about going and seeing other labs and talking about, you know, if you just did this, and this, you could pick up 1% or 2%, but people just aren't as far along from a lot of the trial and error that I think makes you better at things.
Yeah, that's like a pat on the back to the team, I'd say.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. And there's good labs out there, but you know, you do. It's like, some people don't have like, back to one of the things I was saying earlier, it's like, we're able to store a lot of solvents on site that allows for our capacity to be larger than, you know, other facilities. We also have like redundancy across everything. We have multiple chillers, we have freezers like all over the place. And so we really put a lot of effort and capital into making sure that we're keeping everything cold throughout the entire process.
Yeah. Well, great. I appreciate the overview. Let's go check out some of the equipment and then head over to the Solventless line. Well, here we are in the Solventless lab, Micah. There's a few steps to the Solventless process. So why don't we start out with step 1 and explain what this equipment is and what it does?
Yeah. So this is our third extraction line. This is the Solventless room, and we use an access rosin machine. These guys have been great to work with. Shout out to Spencer, since I'm doing this video. And essentially what we do is we take frozen material that is handled with care so that you're not breaking off any of the heads, which is really what you're trying to capture when you're doing high quality solventless material. And it goes through a process where it gets mixed with freezing cold water and ice. And then back in the day, you would basically have a trash can, and you'd be stirring this stuff, you know, trying to keep it as cold as you possibly can. And then from there, it goes through multiple layers of filtration, you know, these bags. And so everything will come out of here into this bagging system, and you're separating the heads at that point, heads and some stalks as well. And then it goes through the next process, which I can walk you guys through if you want. So I guess just real quick, so cold water comes in, material gets loaded into this, and then it basically circulates through this, and it basically disrupts the material in a way to where you're separating the resin glands off of the plant material itself. So when the material's done, you basically have green waste matter that comes out the bottom. And if you've done your job right, you know, then everything that is of value is stripped off of that material.
So it's ice and water designed to break off the trichome heads and just end up with a bunch of heads that are going to go to the next step.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I'll show you guys the next step, which is the next room over. So from there, we've got a series of freeze dryers here. Everything will go in here, sit in here for a period of time. We separate it by filtration side and strains, of course. And then from here, it goes into another process. So it freeze dries down, goes into another freezing process. And then you end up with a material like this. And I'm kind of keeping a very high level, so I'm not, but hopefully you guys can see it. Now you've got kind of dried heads and, you know, maybe some stalks in there as well. And what you do with that is then you load it into these like specialty extraction bags. I don't even remember what they're called, but they get loaded up and then they go onto this axe and rosin machine here, and you're basically taking a heated hot plate that presses the material. So you load up the bags here on each side, hydraulics push down, it's hot, and it basically gets the material that you're trying to extract out of the resin heads. It leaves the sack that holds the resin inside of it, and that the stuff that you want comes and it falls onto this parchment paper here. And then from there, the guys will take it and another process, and they'll turn it into this, which is a cold cure process, which something that would look like this. And Solventless, it's like there's a lot that goes into the methodology of it, like starting with like genetics. Genetics are important because it really comes down to the head structure. Some strains, you hear people say they wash well, and some don't. So you can have like a really, really good strain that does great through hydrocarbon or through ethanol, and it won't perform at all from a yield standpoint out of solventless, and vice versa. You get it both ways. So like when you're cultivating, or if you're focusing on this line, one of the things that we really work with the farms on is like, hey, let's really try and work on genetics that perform well through this line. So
would you say solventless is the fussiest in terms of material, like it likes a certain type of material to be run, or do you see that across all different lines, that it's critical to run the right strains on each line?
Yeah, I think I'd say it like there's less strains available that do well through solventless than there are through the other extraction lines.
And with the solventless here, we have some grape gas that's going through the curing process. This is called cold cure. Mike, is this going to end up something that's DAP most likely?
Yeah, yeah, or the guys will take this and they'll take it to a vape ready, which is another step, and then it can go into a vape cart.
And there's also edible grade rosin as well, which you can infuse into edibles, I really like those because I think that gives you a little bit richer experience than just the distillate edibles. And I remember years ago, Micah, rosin was only really for the connoisseurs. It was very expensive. It wasn't as widely used, but it feels like prices have come down. There's been more, I wouldn't call it mass adoption, but it's been available to more people. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I think it's fair. It's definitely gained in popularity too. And so the more people that are doing it, it's a lot. I think part of it too is like, it's a lot easier to set up a solventless lab than it is to go through the hurdles to get a type 7 sign off, And so I think it's pricing, I think it's connoisseur, like what people are like looking for. There's a lot of people that really prefer this type of concentrate over the hydrocarbon line. And then there's people that prefer that line over this. So, and people war on that over on Instagram all the time. So I think just the adoption of it, more people are doing it. There are a lot more strains now that perform well through the solventless lines than there were in the past. And so I think all of those things kind of coming together have made it to where like this, it's definitely like, if you look at like the market share in California and even New York, solventless makes up a huge part of it. And in the very beginning, like it was de minimis, it was very small.
Yeah, I think according to Headset, it continues to be the smallest of those three lines in terms of sales, but also maybe the fastest growing, that it continues to take. I think maybe as the price comes down, it continues to take over share. Somebody who used to be able to afford live resin now might be able to afford rosin, and that converts them over.
Yeah, total unit sales are probably the smallest out of all three, but I think that the growth is definitely, I bet it's probably the biggest.
Yeah.
And I don't know that for a fact, but I believe that that's what it is.
Yeah. So Micah, today we talked about overview of the company, overview of LEEF Labs, and we walked through the three different lines. When you think about the business growing in the future, and so we're fortunate that we're having year-over-year revenue growth, we're having strong volume growth, so we're producing more and more products. When you think about the future of LEEF Labs, how do you see the park evolving? Do you see that you needed to get bigger? Do you see that you want to improve the technology? Is there anything on an innovation basis in terms of scaling going forward that's really a priority?
I mean, definitely innovation, I think, is super important. Like, where can we get better, faster, cheaper, from a production standpoint, put out better quality product with what we're currently doing. So we're constantly focused on innovation for sure. Future of the business, like I was saying earlier, it's like, I kind of view this facility in California being the flagship location of what I'd envision seeing in many years to come, So like if we can be the premier go-to lab concentrate provider for all the brands that we work with in multiple markets, domestically and internationally as well, that's really the long-term vision of where I see it going. I do think, and look, if I'm thinking in like 10-year blocks or whatnot, I think at some point in time, it probably does make sense for, I think that we're, like, if you think of building a house, right? Like LEEF has a very solid foundation now between the farm and our extraction throughput for being like the foundation of the house. And at some point in time, it's going to make sense for us to put up the walls and the windows, and that could come through M&A or it can come through organic growth. I don't know, which direction we go there, but I think that consolidation is probably needed at this point in the industry for efficiencies. And so the goal has been like, hey, let's just get the foundation very, very strong and on solid footing, and then we'll have optionality in years to come on how we want to start to put together the rest of the house.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great tour, Mike. I really appreciate you taking the time to show us around.